Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sam Aronson, the president of the American Physical Society, and this is our annual business meeting. We're going to hear brief presentations from me and a few other officers of the Society, and then we'll entertain questions at the end. So hold your questions till we're all through talking, and then the appropriate person will field the questions when we get through all the presentations. I'm going to spend a few minutes here on some just context and high-level view from my perspective of where we are now in the year ahead. The Society's issues from the point of view of the leadership of the Society it's captured here for the coming year, at least at the highest level, the issues that we expect to be concerned with. I recognize that for most members of the Society, the job of the leadership of the Society is to produce the highest quality physics journals in the world and deliver them on time and to run these meetings and conferences. So the first rule of what we do in the leadership of the Society is to do no harm to that mandate from the members. In pursuit of that, we spent the last year examining the way we operate as a Society, and have actually made changes, which I'm sure you're familiar with, from reading APS News or the APS website. We've made some changes in the way the governance is done. You'll hear more about that a little later. This is the year in which we need to make that work, so we're test driving all the components that we put in place, new missions for the Board of Directors and the Council of Representatives, a new arrangement of the staff and reporting authorities within, and new policies and procedures that clearly lay out the roles and responsibilities of all of those of us who serve the Society. So there were a lot of changes. It was a big effort. I think it was a very good effort, and now we're going to put it into practice this year, and unlike maybe in the past, continually monitor how we're doing in terms of serving the Society's needs and adjust the management as needed to continue to do the best job of that. A couple of the issues that are come into view on our radar screen for 2015 include publishing, which, as you'll see from the subsequent talks, is a very big part of the Society's business. It not only supplies the world-class journals, it costs a lot, which costs a lot of money to do. It brings in revenue that helps operate the Society. With the stepping down from the leadership last year of our publisher-treasurer, we're embarking on a search for a new publisher for the journals, and an issue that we have to think about is the coming mandates or the present mandates for open access, accessibility of published articles to everyone. That has impact and influence on the business of publishing the journals, the costs and the revenues, and so it's an important issue for the Society. And so that's something that we've been working on for years, actually, in terms of seeing open access coming, and we will continue to work on that. In terms of running the Society more efficiently and effectively and being more able to handle what is, like for every other human enterprise, an increasingly rapid evolution of issues, opportunities, and threats, we sought in this governance makeover to improve operational excellence and to unify the organization in a way that would make it easier to execute on strategic initiatives that support the Society's mission. So, this year, looking at it in the broadest terms, we will be consolidating around the new structure, implementing the changes, debugging it as necessary, and filling key positions in the Society's leadership. I mentioned the publisher a minute ago. When Joe Serene stepped down as treasurer publisher, we also find ourselves in need of a chief financial officer as well as a publisher. And we've recently appointed a chief operating officer and a chief information officer. In changing the structure above that level, we have made the change from a society which is governed by a group of 3 operating officers to one that reports to a chief executive officer. And you're going to hear from the chief executive officer next. The idea of these changes, as I said, in a speeding up landscape and with issues to deal with, was to make APS more nimble in the sense of more strategic in its forward-thinking, more responsive to issues as they come up. And so the idea behind the changes was to make it work better. The model in which we have a CEO on top of the staff is to facilitate a more coherent approach to operations. This involves making a clear division between the governing bodies and the executive office in terms of jobs. One to carry out the mission of the Society, the other to provide oversight and other elements of their fiduciary responsibility as a board of directors and a council. These councils and the council and the board have their functions redefined, as I mentioned earlier, with more distinct roles. And one of the things we'll look at this year is how the individual units in the Society participate in society-wide governance. The idea is to build a more unified APS, which we called in the strategic plan published in 2012, One APS. Oh. I'm not going to spend much more time, but I did want to tell you what One APS is meant to stand for, what that phrase is meant to stand for. It entails that we look at our priorities in response to both opportunities and threats to our mission as a single unit, and consider the whole society in determining the relevance, effectiveness, and sustainability of the various priorities that we undertake to execute. There's a whole list of things here. I started this presentation with service to members and publishing, and some of the other issues on this list are meant to be to describe things we do to support those primary missions, all of which need some attention from a holistic point of view, and that's what One APS really means. This is the fine print on One APS. All I really wanted to show you here, sorry, is how to find the strategic plan. This is the plan that was for the years 2013 to 2017, so we're right in the middle. It's midterm for the strategic plan. Many efforts have been spawned by that strategic plan, task forces to look at publishing issues, to look at prizes and awards, to look at all of the activities that we do in support of the Society's mission. And so it's good to be familiar with what the goals of the of the strategic plan were. This happens to be goal 4 on an organizational excellence, because I would have used this in a longer presentation to tell you more about what that means. But I think you should have got the idea from the previous slide on that. So we will come to questions later. This is a leftover slide from another presentation, so don't ask me your questions now. Instead, let me introduce the next speaker. We're going to hear from, in this order, from the CEO, the editor-in-chief, the Speaker of the Council, which is a job that you may not recognize from the previous organization, a very important new role, and from the interim treasurer, which is now not a chief financial officer, but a member of the board of directors who has oversight of the financial activities of the society. And then we'll get to questions and answers. Some people are presumably watching this from their desktop, and so we may get questions coming in from there, questions from the room, and we'll deal with them at the end. So without further ado, I want to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the APS, Kate Kirby.
Thank you, Sam. So I want to just give you a brief recap of some steps since the membership vote on corporate reform. Just to remind you that the corporate reform package was put forward to the membership as one issue. It had a lot of different pieces in it, but the APS membership voted to pass the proposed articles of incorporation and the Constitution and bylaws 94% to 6%. So the Council officially adopted the new Constitution and bylaws on November 15th, 2014, and the amended and restated articles of incorporation were filed in Washington, D.C. on November 17th, 2014, and that's exactly 100 years from when the original articles of incorporation were filed in Washington, D.C. So Mac Beasley, APS president at the time, got to sign a document which we hope will be relevant for another 100 years. The Council and the Board at their meetings November 21st and 22nd approved new policies and procedures documents that contained a lot of the details about that had been originally in our Constitution and bylaws previously, and which we wanted to keep a lot of the similar sorts of operations going forward as we evaluated their relevance to our operations today. So the APS governance structure, Sam has already said a few words about this, with the board of directors, which is responsible for all matters of governance and finance and the strategic directions of the society. The board of directors are largely elected from the council, and the council members are elected by either the general membership, that is for the international and general counselors, or by the units, our divisions and forums. The Council of Representatives are responsible for all matters of science and membership, including science policy, prizes and awards, our interaction with our units, and also our meetings. And there's some new positions. Speaker of the Council, as Sam said, is Nan Finney, and you will hear shortly from her. The treasurer in the interim is Mac Beasley, who also is our past president of APS. And that's until we have an election for treasurer, which will happen in the May-June timeframe in our general membership elections. And corporate secretary is Ken Cole. So let me tell you a little bit about my plans for the next year. Number one is appointing a senior management team to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. And that includes the offices that Sam described, particularly we're in the middle right now of a search for an outstanding publisher. I'm also working to partner with the APS elected leadership, our board and council, to transition to a new governance structure. And this is a very exciting time, and we just finished council meeting yesterday and board meeting today, which were really, I think, very exciting because the agendas were very engaging, and I'm really excited about the directions that we're going there. And then finally, working with APS staff to better unify our offices over 3 venues: our editorial offices in Ridge, Long Island, and our College Park office, and also our DC office, to create a more coherent one APS. So let me now move on to let you know how big we are. We've been growing, and here's a graph which shows how the demographics of our membership. We're now at 51,523 members. About half of our members fall into the category of regular and life members. And the shaded areas point out in each sector how many of our members are international, meaning that they live outside of the United States. About a third of our members fall into the category of students, and that's both graduate and undergraduate students. And as you see, a fair fraction of graduate students are international. So our objective of the APS, both in our old Constitution as well as in the new Constitution and bylaws that were adopted in November, is advancing and diffusing the knowledge of physics. And so we have our core areas that directly serve this mission. Our publications, and you will hear more about our publications from Editor-in-Chief Gene Sprouse very shortly, so I won't say much more about them except to remark that they are a suite of absolutely outstanding physics journals. And so this is an extremely important society activity. And then also our meetings. And as many of you know, we're beginning our March meeting here starting tomorrow morning. And April meeting. March meeting was actually in San Antonio a month ago with approximately 9,200 attendees. The April meeting here in Baltimore is actually looking like more than 1,400 attendees. So the numbers have gone up since I actually made the slide. But in addition, APS runs a number of unit meetings, and our unit meetings are very, very strong. And I particularly note the Division of Fluid Dynamics, which appears to be almost doubling in size over the last 5 or 6 years. And a number of our other divisions have their own meetings. And our geographical sections also organize their own meetings as well. We will be having an all APS meeting, very much like we had our centennial meeting in 1999. We'll be having an all APS meeting in 2019. So our programmatic areas respond to our mission more broadly, that is advancing and diffusing the knowledge of physics, and education and diversity, advocacy and our public affairs work, outreach and international affairs all help in some way to advance and diffuse the knowledge of physics. And these programs are very highly valued by our members. There's significant external recognition that comes to APS because of the programs that we run. And these are funded in part by the excess of revenue over costs from the APS publications, and our treasurer will probably describe a little more the detail on that. It's also, we have funds in what we call reserves, and we are able to take a 4% draw on those reserves yearly to help us with our budget and meet our expenses. And in addition, many of our programs are funded by federal grants from NSF and DOE. And finally, member donations are extremely important in supporting these programs. We carry out these programs with other societies, not only the American Association of Physics Teachers, but also the American Astronomical Society, the AAAS, Optical Society, AIP, and in particular their work with their Society of Physics students, the American Chemical Society, as well as other international physics societies. So let me describe a few initiatives that we've been working on over the past several years. One is raising the profile of industrial physics within the APS. And we learned from our early career task force. We had a task force to look at our early career members, meaning graduate students and postdocs, and trying to understand how we serve this cohort better. And a number of them expressed the concern, and so there was a recommendation that the career in industrial physics and in physics in the private sector be much more evident to the students and postdocs within the APS, because they're being turned out in academia. They know a lot about academia, but most of them will not find ultimately their career paths in academia. And so it was very clear that we needed to be doing more to feature the opportunities of an industrial career. And in addition, I would like to have more industrial physicists actually joining the APS, and therefore I would also, we'd want to know how to serve that cohort better. So we have an industrial physics fellow, Stephen Lambert, who's been doing a fabulous job, not only as a liaison with our forum on industrial and applied physics, but also really interacting with industrial physicists around the country to get a perspective on what they want to see from APS. He helped to organize a workshop focusing on industrial physics issues, which was held in the fall, October 6th to 7th, and there was a report then that was published in March, and there was a press release and press conference on this at the March meeting, focusing on national issues in industrial physics, challenges and opportunities, and there are a whole list of recommendations for that are quite actionable, and I think this will inform our future steps greatly. And another issue that was actually just discussed at our council meeting was the mentoring of early career physicists by industry professionals. Let me also just point out another initiative that we've been taking to serve our early career physicists better, and that's to start APS Local Links. These connect physicists in industry with early career physicists, again, students and postdocs in geographically centered areas. The local links up and running are at 5 of these areas: Austin, DC, Baltimore, Boston, Denver, Boulder, and Silicon Valley. And they all have LinkedIn pages and events planned in April and May. These are informal events, no formal talks, but immensely helpful in terms of students and people that are working in physics but outside of academia to come together and to understand and to network, understand the opportunities that students might have outside of academia. Another initiative that we took on a couple of years ago are these conferences for undergraduate women in physics. And in 2015, there were 1,200 undergraduates that attended these conferences at 8 sites around the U.S. APS is the administrative home for these conferences. We handle the registration. We obtained funding both from DOE and NSF, and we've been working with the National Organizing Committee and site leaders to make sure that the programs are really exciting and compelling and for the young women coming to these meetings. And in 2016, there are actually 9 sites around the country that are have been selected. And this all happens on one weekend every year. It's the Martin Luther King weekend. One of the big events this year is the 2015 International Year of Light, proclaimed by the UN General Assembly. APS is a founding partner. The opening ceremonies were held at UNESCO headquarters in Paris, the City of Light, 19th to 20th of January this year. And APS held a fellows reception, including a number of our members who live in the Paris area, fellows and friends attending these opening ceremonies. APS has also curated 6 specific advances reported in APS journals focusing on the science and technology of light. And those can be found at the website as listed here. And the Kavli Foundation sponsored a session at the March meeting on the frontiers of light. The APS Medal for Exceptional Achievement in Research was started this year, and with the largest gift in APS history from Jay Jones, entrepreneur. He gave us $1 million to start this prize. It's our largest APS prize, and it will be awarded in 2016. And there's a special ceremony being planned to celebrate the awarding of this prize. And you see Jay Jones and his wife surrounded by myself, Mac Beasley, and Darlene Logan, who's development officer. Finally, let me just say there are 2014 annual reports available for everyone here in the audience, but also they're available online. And I encourage you to read those to understand more about what we've been doing the past year. Thank you. Yes. So now let me introduce Editor-in-Chief Jean Sprouse.
Thank you. This is a picture of our new building in Ridge. We added a 2nd floor to our existing building and remodeled it. It's really, we're in it now and enjoying it. I want to tell you about our journals. This is kind of a graphical representation of the history of our journals, starting in 1893 at Cornell, and then APS took them over in 1913. RMP was split off in 29, and Physical Review Letters started in 58, and the journals split. And these journals here are the latest. They're all electronic, and these 4 here are open access, and the very latest is Physical Review Applied. I once had a president of APS, none of the current presidents, complained to me about Journal of Applied Physics, and I had to tell him that I have nothing to do with it. It's not an APS journal. And so the key is that all of our journals have the name Physical Review in them, with except one exception, Reviews of Modern Physics. That's the way to remember if it's an APS journal. Our journals are the most highly cited in physics. Physical Review Letters is the most important journal in physics, and by far it's partly because they're big journals, but they really are important in the field of physics. We are very cost effective. This is the subscription price that libraries pay. Most APS members don't really know about this, but I think it's important that we realize that what the service that we're providing the community is really done very efficiently, and our journals are by far the cheapest. I mean, they're the best, but they're also the most cost-effective. A factor of 10 less than the commercial journal like Springer, and a factor of 50 less than Nature. And this low price for our journals means that when you publish an article in the APS journals, there's very broad subscriptions, and you reach the most number of physicists by publishing in our journals because they're most widely subscribed to. Print is disappearing. There's a few diehards left, but I'm sure most of you have not gone to your library and got a print copy of the Physical Review to read it. You read it on your desk now, and but it is on its way out. And so what is APS doing about open access? Well, our position is that we're for open access to the greatest extent that it doesn't interfere with the financial stability of the society. And so in order to explain some of the open access initiatives, I made this diagram. It's a little bit complicated, but here you submit a manuscript to the APS, and it bounces around between the editor, referees, comes back to you, and so on. And eventually, there's a decision made to reject or to accept. And this entity here, that's before it is sent to copy editing and so on, is called the author's final manuscript, and this is called the version of record. That's what we actually publish. And of course, you say it's the author's final manuscript, but APS has invested a lot. Just the very information that it was accepted in Physical Review letters makes this a different manuscript than that one there. That information is of value that has been added to it. And actually about a half to two-thirds of the expense of publishing is already been spent in the author's final manuscript. Now, we allow the authors, we actually allow the version of record on the author's website immediately on publication, or we author the version of record on the author's institution's website, or we allow the author's final manuscript on the archive or on Chorus. These are different ways in which, these are all what we call green open access, because nobody pays to have things published. It's just they're in the subscription journals. But we don't allow the version of record anywhere else, like on the archive or on ResearchGate or other sharing institutions. So another way you can make an article open access is if you pay a fee, we will make any article in our journals, in our subscription journals, to be open access. So there are occasional a few percent of the articles in our subscription journals have been made open access by the authors paying a fee. And then we have 3 journals: Physical Review, Special Topics, Accelerators and Beams, Physics Education Research, and PRX, that you only publish in this. They're paid for in PRX by an article processing fee, and there are other arrangements for these other journals. And then we also have free access to viewpointed papers, and the whole publication physics is freely available. So there are possible new initiatives on open access that we're thinking about, but we'll tell you about those in the future. But anyway, we really want to thank all of you who contribute to support the journals. First, authors by sending us their best work, referees, readers. We have outstanding referees that we recognize every year. We have volunteers to come and help us on review and search committee members and editorial board members. And all of these people are really what makes the journals work. And they're not my journals, they're not even the APS journals, but they belong to the whole physics community. So thanks. I'd like now to introduce Nan Finney, the Speaker of the Council, who will say a few more words.
Thank you. So I just want to say a few words about the new Council of Representatives, although Kate's already introduced some of this. There's a Speaker of the Council, which is something we never had before, and there's a Council Steering Committee, which is kind of like the board has an executive committee, which has myself, the President-elect, 4 counselors, Kate and Ken acts as our secretary, and we meet about every other week. And as Kate mentioned, there's a new mandate. We have responsibility for most of the things like membership, scientific meetings, fellowship, and prizes and awards, while the board of directors now does all the financial stuff. And we've done a bunch of things. The council steering committee had come up with the committee that's going to be selecting the new medal that you just heard about. And also we'll do the selection for 2 society-wide prizes called the Lilienfeld and the Valley Prizes. And the council steering committee acts on things that need to be taken care of really quickly that can't wait for a full council meeting. And then one of the big things we did was try and revamp the council meeting to be more, as Kate said, more lively and more interesting. And we're always anxious to hear from people what they'd like us to be working on and talking about. So that's an open invitation. One of the other things we did this year, which was really new and different, was we participated very actively in the leadership convocation in February. All of the council steering committee members attended. We participated in the breakout discussions. We had a special meeting with committee chairs, many of whom joined us by phone, which is really an efficient way to do it. We had a breakout session with small group session with the unit leaders talking about how they would like to communicate better with the council and how they'd like the council, what they'd like the council to do for them. And we were kind of inundated with suggestions. It was actually quite exciting. I think people got the idea that the council is going to be much more activist, and so they were really interested, and they had a lot of ways that they'd like us to talk to them. And then one of the things we did for the council meeting was, in response to this discussion, was to send out the briefing book, the agenda, and the materials for the meeting in advance so the unit leaders could read them and give us any feedback in advance of the meeting. And we're going to try and meet with the section leaders because they felt a little underrepresented. And that's basically it. I just wanted to give you a kind of like 10,000-foot overview on what we're doing on the council. Okay, so I think the final speaker is Mac Beasley, our past president and now our interim treasurer, and he has about half a dozen other hats as well.
Yes, thank you, Nan. Well, I'll come to it. I'm the interim treasurer because, as Kate, I think, said, in the new structure, the treasurer will be elected and be an elected member of the board, and the first elected treasurer won't be elected until June and won't enter duty until January of next year. So, and then I go away. So I'm the culprit this year. I'd like to do 2 things here. I'm basically going to give you the financial report for 2014, which has had its final audit. I mean, everything's in place and so on and so forth. But I think it's also important to give you a little introduction to the basics of how we operate. It's just nomenclature. I mean, the logic will be clear to you, but so you can understand the other things I'll be saying, it helps to have that. And then I'll go give you a fairly high-level view of what happened in 2014, and it was a good year. This is my gesture to corporate reform. I'm not going to go through all aspects of it other than to say, remember, we had a treasurer before, but really in practice it was more like a chief financial officer. We didn't have a treasurer in the usual nonprofit corporate sense of somebody on the board who makes sure the board is thinking about financial and oversight and long-term issues. So here's the board of directors. There will be an elected treasurer. I'm filling those shoes for the moment. And that treasurer is responsible for the oversight. The agent that does that is the finance committee, and the treasurer is the chair of that. The chief executive officer is on that committee, so there's good connection between them and the executive, and the president-elect is on it, and 3 members of the society. So it's a small committee, and it works quite well. And the finance committee also, the treasurer also chairs the investment committee. This is a group of thoughtful people who monitor our investments and the company that handles the investments on a day-to-day basis, and makes recommendations to the board about policies on financial matters, and that's a natural sort of thing. So that's that connection. And then there's looser connections with the audit committee. You don't want the finance committee and the audit committee to be on top of one another. So there is an audit committee. They report to the board. And we've introduced a development advisory committee because development is going to play in a more and more important role in APS's finances. And so there's a connection there so that this set of connections is really set there so that we can do good oversight, and I think we saw an example of that in the board meeting today. And I think people are pleased with that. Now here's the plumbing, and it's very intuitive. Just think about your own finances. There's an operating account. That's what you and whomever you're living with have to sort out where the money's going to be spent and so on and so forth. So this is the operations, and there's equivalent capital accounts, and then there's a bank account. We basically have a cash reserve. These are reserves, but it's basically the place where the financial management of the organization can write checks, put the deposits in, and write checks. Okay, and it makes a little bit of interest, like your bank account sometimes does. And then there is our investment portfolio. These are the deep reserves, if you like, and these are invested, and we, under present policies, can extract 4% of the payout. The payout is 4% of the investment portfolio, and that helps to finance the organization. So just think of it in sort of your own direct terms. Now, this is a pie chart representation of the operating budget in 2014. Our operating budget is $51 million. We are not a small operation. Let's look at where the revenue comes from. That's here. Blue is the publications, and that's clearly where most of the revenue comes from, largest expense too. And then there are other revenue that comes from this is scientific meetings, when you pay your registration and so on and so forth. So there's money that comes in there. This is the membership, when you pay your membership and whatever, that comes in here. And this is the grants and contracts. These are contracts that go to APS. And this is the contribution to the operating costs. It comes from fundraising through development. There's other things they bring in, but this actually is a little slice that goes into paying the operating costs. And this here is the amount that we draw from our investments to balance the budget. And there's constraints on that, and I'll come back. So the journals, the endowment, the reserves, and development all provide income for the society. Now here are the expenses, and of course the expenses for the journals, publications, is less than the income, and that money goes to fund some of these other things. If you look at the brown and the gray, you can see this sector and this sector are the ones that don't have income, or not much. And so the profit, if you like, or the revenues derived from these three things I was talking about, pay for these things. And this is the largest one, and that is public affairs and programs, the kinds of things that Kate was talking about, outreach and our Washington office and so on and so forth. So that's the biggest draw on those monies. So that's the way it works. Okay, that's a pictorial thing, and I think that's useful and important to get. Now, here's the sort of the numbers. All those slices are shown here, and I'm not going to go through this. This is just in case you want to look at it. But I do want to make an important point. Here's the total revenue. I mean, we talked about it in pieces of the pie, and you'll see that this was the budget in 14, and the actuals were a little less, okay? And now let's look at the expenses, and here are the totals. The expenses were also less, okay? So, in fact, we did fairly well in terms of the net operation. Now, the Finance Committee will look at some of these entries here and say, well, why was that 11% and whatever? That's our job. But I think the thing you, as members of the society, should know is that things were balanced out quite sensibly. Now, here's the bottom line, so to speak, the operating income loss, and you'll see those are losses. We budgeted a loss of $2.8 million. It actually was 1.3, and it's those intended budgeted losses that we use the income from our investments to cover. But that's limited. It's 4%. So down here is the money that would be available to cover any deficit or anything else we want to do with it, and you can see that we're quite comfortable here. We didn't need all of the money that we could have drawn by our policies to cover the costs. So this was a very good year, okay? Now, let's now look at the reserves. The reserves have various components too. Here's the unrestricted portfolio. That's a lot of money, and it's unrestricted. We can do anything we want with it. Okay, here are the restricted funds, and they are principally prizes and awards. Let's not get into endowment versus prizes and awards. These are what we use for prizes and awards. These we can spend the principal on if we want to. These we can't. That's the difference, but these are all prizes and awards. And this is some residual left over from an earlier campaign, which will be spent down over the next couple of years with some programs that we talked about today in the board today. I would like to point out that there was it's been mentioned, that these funds got a big shot in the arm because we got this $1 million gift for the Medal for Exceptional Research that came in December. So that's listed, that's indicated here. So that was $1 million that came in. Okay, so it was, from the point of view of development and effects on prizes and awards, it was also a good year. Okay, now, I think, yeah, this shows you how the reserves grow over time. The invested reserves are here. The operating reserve, with the cash account, if you like, is here. You can say, why did it go up and come down? That was paying for the renovation at Ridge. It was a planned thing and whatnot. So there's nothing there other than money was put in that then went out to cover the costs of the renovation of Ridge, and that was all approved by the board and so on and so forth. And the prizes and awards is up here. The blue, rather, is the prizes and awards. But you can see we doing rather nicely. Here was the ugly year, 2008. We all know that was bad. We've nicely recovered. In fact, this year, this 2013 was a very good year, and I'll show you that as well. So the other thing you should know as members is the total here is about 130 or so million. Our operating budget is 50. So we have almost 3 times our operating expenses in reserves. That's a very healthy situation to be in. So by any standard, we are comfortable on that front, okay? I mean, as you know, the threats to us are in publishing and the uncertainties there, not having cash and not having resources that we can call on to run our business and handle certain modest emergencies. Okay, so that's good shape too. Now I don't want to. That's not. I'll just skip that. There is this cash account, and you might amuse you to know how it's handled. I mean, this is the operating reserve, our cash bank account, if you like. You can see it has these oscillations in it, and they're quite understandable. Money comes in largely early in the year, and it goes out more slowly, and so you get this. And as long as you can keep this above zero, then our financial people can write checks and not go crazy, okay? Now, if this starts to get a little small to run the society, then we have to shift funds into there, and we do that from the investment reserve. Okay? But we haven't had to do that in a while. I just want to make one investment. This is the investment portfolio. I don't want, again, there's detail here, but the big picture is, I want to point out, is that in 2013, at the beginning of the year, the balance in these reserves was about 120 million, and it was 132 at the end of the year. Where did that come from? Well, it came from here. This is unrealized gains. What that means is the stock market went up, and the valuation of our portfolio grew very, very substantially that year. Less so in 14. Okay? So the balance at the end of the year that was shown in the pie chart I showed you was 135 millions, and that's this is just a numerical representation of what I showed you in the pie graph. So we had a good year here in terms of the market. We had a good year here in terms of donations. Okay, I want to come back to the development side of things, because I think the management of APS realizes that in the financial uncertainties going ahead, we're going to have to work harder at development. Okay, so I just want to give you an idea how it works and what where the monies come from and what the magnitudes are. So here's the revenue. That means this is money raised by the development operation. And you see individual contributions, your membership, gifts. Membership, when you renew, you can add some money in. There's gifts, realized bequests. That's $445,000. Okay, there's a number of sponsorships. For example, there's sponsorships at this meeting, I have no doubt, for people who want to be here, and they'll give you a little money to run your meetings and so on and so forth. And that there's a number of those. Let's not worry about the details. And that adds up to $825,000. So the fundraising and the development operation brought in $825,000 to the operating budget. That's small compared to what the journals do, but it's there. And maybe we can do something about that in the future. Prizes and awards. This was a very good year. This is the gift for the Jones gift for the new medal. So this number here is, there's a few other things that came in. So the total is about $2 million, which is, again, a very good year. This does not include contingent pledges. We're always out, trying to get money to do the good things we do, and sometimes you get a pledge. Sometimes you get a check. And some pledges, and here's an example, the Jones gift, we have $1 million in the bank. That's here. Okay, we have a pledge for another $1 million in a remainder trust. Well, that might get changed. I don't believe for a moment it will, but it could. So from a bookkeeping point of view, we don't show this on our books as an asset available, but you all should know that we're out there doing these things, and we want to keep track of this a little bit better so that you will know exactly what your organization is doing in the way of fundraising for your activities. Okay. What does it cost us to do that? This is the cost of running the development office. The only thing I wanted to put in is that they also host and do a wonderful job on the fellows reception. Some of you, I'm sure, have been there. So that's what that costs, and that's lumped in there. That's not specifically for fundraising, but I thought you ought to see the other side of the ledger. And we're putting a lot more effort into this now. So I think that's it. I will just again summarize. The organization is in very good shape from the point of view its reserves. It had a well-balanced and well within our means budget in performance in 2014. I would say this year we're looking in the out years, and it gets a little bit more complicated because of the ambitions of this society and the uncertainties in the publishing world. So those are things that we're now looking at, and I think trying to do in a highly strategic way. So we look out several years. We look at scenarios of bad things that could happen and see how we would handle them. And so I think that we're beginning to do that fairly well. And I'll end on that happy note.
Thank you, Mac, and thanks to all the speakers today for the information presented. We have time now for the questions and answers that I discussed earlier. So are there questions in the room? And then whoever's monitoring the web, I'll ask for those questions as well. Yes, right here. Would you use the microphone behind you?
Apparently, APS is very successful organization from the evidence we got and the achievement we have. And to come along with achieve, there's always a problem of overconfidence. One of the problems is APS do not look at the activities beyond APS. Therefore, a consequence is they don't know many important experiments has been done. For instance, E equals mc squared Einstein equation has been proven wrong by 3 types of experiments. One is the measurement of the charge capacitor, another is measurement of a heat up metal, another is the measurement of the charged metal ball. And also, because E MC is not right, Einstein actually has made mistakes in general relativity. So what I'm saying is, while we are very successful, we are confident, but we also have a problem of overconfidence. So I come here to remind the APS officers to take a look at this and improve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Other comments or questions? We have something online? By the way, one important officer of the Society I didn't introduce yet is the Corporate Secretary, Ken Cole. He's sitting with us up here.
Thank you, Sam. We have 3 questions from an individual who is traveling right now and so cannot even attend online, but would like to have some questions asked. The first question has to do with our annual election. It appears that a relatively small percentage of APS members typically vote in the election open to all members. What are the Board of Directors and the Council of Representatives planning to do to rectify this ongoing paucity of participation in APS elections?
Yes, in general, this past year, 16% of our members voted in the general election. It's generally been of the order of 16, 17, 18% for the past several years. You might have noticed in the membership demographics that a large proportion of our members are students, 33% these days, and that cohort tends not to vote in our elections. So we have some ideas for trying to encourage them to cast their votes, including using social media to make them aware that it's really important to get their vote. We're also working with our Vice President, Laura Green, on strategies to reach the student members better. And they've already prepared an email to student members about the importance of voting. And of course, our council, unit counselors can also encourage their executive committees to send their unit members reminders to vote. And this year, the APS election, it will open May 15th and close on June 30th. And the candidates will be announced in an email by the end of April.
Okay, the second question is this. It appears that there is a very high turnover rate of members each year. My understanding is that the APS loses about 13,000 members per year and gains about 14,000 members each year. What are the Board of Directors and the Council of Representatives planning to do about this high turnover rate of membership?
So during 2014, actually, there were 11,000 members who were terminated for non-payment. Of those, about 60% were student members. Students take advantage of the first year of free membership in APS, particularly when they're attending meetings and giving a presentation, but they sometimes don't stay within the physics discipline and therefore don't retain their membership in the society. So APS is adding a number of new programs and services for our younger members, and I mentioned several of these in my talk just a few minutes ago. But it's important to get these student members engaged with the organization and to really consider APS their professional home for years to come. So we're trying to encourage them to participate in the Future of Physics Days. These are undergraduate programs at our meetings. We have taken on these conferences for undergraduate women in physics. We've also started Local Links, again, to encourage more engagement of our younger members. And we've also started some mentoring programs, both in the, particularly in, I think I mentioned in terms of industrial physicists and bringing early career members together with those working in the private sector in physics. So there are a number of things we're trying to do to engage our student members and serve them better. And we certainly hope that that will help retain a number of them throughout their physics careers.
And the final question that that came in before this meeting, in the meeting's announcements loose leaf page insert in the APS News, there is no April meeting listed beyond 2016. Why is the April 2017 meeting not listed? Is the April meeting going to be abolished?
No, the April meeting is not going to be abolished. And it just, there was significant consideration about what we should be doing in 2017. And one of the recommendations of the April meeting task force was that we should try to hold this meeting every other year in Washington, D.C. In April, that is just not possible. The prices are through the roof in terms of the hotel rooms, and even flights are very much more expensive into the D.C. area in the April timeframe. And so in exploring how to act on this recommendation, we decided to try to go for a February date. We've had the April meeting in February before, back in 2010, when we met with our sister society, the American Association of Physics Teachers. And so, in fact, we will be holding the April meeting at the end of January in 2017 in Washington, D.C.
Okay, that is all that I am aware of as far as questions, but I believe it's open for anyone else in the room.
Yes, I want to give people a chance to ask their questions. Are there any in real time? No? Okay. How about in real space, which, namely right here? Well, seeing no further questions, I would like to adjourn this meeting, this annual business meeting of the Society, and thank you all very much for your participation. Thanks again to all the speakers.